Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started. And the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is Jacqueline Perez, and Jacqueline is the founder of Kuel Life, an online magazine and shop for women over 45. Her mission, very much like mine, is to redefine midlife for the modern woman and to create relevant content and products for us. So, it's great to have you here, Jack.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here, Rachel. I thank you so much for the invitation. So I'm very excited to be here.
Now, you have created this wonderful online hub, quite similar to mine, and we've decided we're going to collaborate, not compete, which I think is wonderful. But what made you want to create Kuel Life?
The start of Kuel Life is similar to, I think, conversation I had with you about what prodded you to start your hub, in that I was living a really big, colorful, bright colored life, living on the tails. And when I hit my early 50s, all of a sudden it felt like I started to disappear. I mean, literally, it felt like I could go out in my pajamas and nobody would notice. And when I started talking to my fellow sisters, my friends, they started feeling the same way. And I know that I'm just not ready to throw in the towel. We are not our mothers. We're not our grandmothers. And I knew I couldn't be the only one. That was the reason I started it, was for myself, because I felt like there was nothing speaking to me out there. And I really wanted to create it and was hoping that other women would feel the same way and it would help, all of us, a lot of us.
It's about scratching our own itches, isn't it? That's definitely what I did.
Yes, exactly. I like that phrase, scratching your own itch. It's really hard, though, when it's like on your back blade and you can't really reach. Sometimes you need a little help. But for the most part, we can scratch our own itch, which is great.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking you've always been quite entrepreneurial, haven't you? So what is it like starting your own startup in later life, I'm going to say, tentatively?
Yes, I often tell people that I was probably the most disappointing corporate hire that Hewlett-Packard ever got out of MBA school. I went to MBA school. I checked all the boxes, like the right degree and the right jobs. And they recruited me out of University of Chicago. And when I got to Hewlett-Packard, I was looking at, my boss, his boss, her boss. And I kept looking up the ladder. And I realized I don't want any of those jobs. Like, what am I doing here? And so that was like in the mid to late 90s. And my husband and I at the time decided to start our own PR and marketing firm in San Francisco. So that was my first sort of venture out into being an entrepreneur. But I was basically supporting other entrepreneurs. I was helping to market and position and launch other people's ideas. And it was great. I mean, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful ride. But at some point in time, I decided, hey, you know what? It's time to take care of my idea. And so I've switched now. And instead of launching other people's ideas, I'm here trying to get mine off the ground or, to propel it further.
That's so interesting. I did an MBA as well. And I tried to fit myself into those corporate boxes.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. And then I went and did PR as well. But I did financial PR. So I kind of stayed in the financial city of London and did all of that. But yeah, there comes a time, I think, doesn't there, when it's just, do I really want to keep jumping through these hoops and doing other people's stuff, or do I want to actually do my stuff?
Yeah, it wasn't as fulfilling. And, I made a lot more money than I currently make, but in all honesty, I am a lot happier and more fulfilled working on Kuel Life because I really believe in the mission. And I mean, I know you believe in the mission because we have the same mission, which is why, which is why I'm really glad that we are collaborating, right? Because I think there's so much more strength in collaboration than there is competition. And all right, let's just talk numbers, right? Women over 50, we are the largest cohort on the planet right now. And we have most of the wealth, and we make about 85 to 90% of the purchasing decisions. And, we're not talking toothpaste brand, right? We're talking like big ticket items. And no one is speaking to us. So really, could it just be Kuel Life, the only player out there that's going to own the whole marketplace? No, that's just not enough. There's too many of us. We need as many organizations out there supporting women in midlife as we possibly can. And the organizations, the different hubs, need to support each other because we are stronger together. And so that's a great place to be, I think.
I think it's absolutely crucial, actually. But it's interesting, isn't it? I think that women, I've talked about this bit on the podcast in the past, we're taught to compete. It's our natural thing to compete. And, if you think of the analogy, if you look at the boardroom table and there's only 2 seats for women, we're competing for those 2 seats out of maybe 20, whereas in fact, really, we should be competing for 20 out of 20 of those board seats. But that's not the way it works. And then when you think of sort of, in younger life, we compete for men, don't we? We compete for men's attention. So I think we're taught as women to compete. And I love this thing about getting to midlife and going through menopause and actually getting to the stage where we don't need to compete anymore. We can just be who we want to be, and we can start building things together, as you say, which I think is so powerful.
Well, here's also the difference, Rachel, between what we grew up with in corporate America and what we're doing now, is that we've just built our own table, right?
Yeah.
And we have our own table,
Yes.
and every seat at that table is populated by a woman's butt. And if there's another woman who wants to get in on the table, we just squeeze over and just make room for another chair. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't continue to fight the good fight in the boardrooms and in government. And, women make over 50% of the population, but we don't represent 50% of the leadership in institutions. And, the United States just made actually, it's not a tiny jump. It's a big jump. We just elected our first female into the White House as a VP, which I'm incredibly proud that our country was able to do that, because honestly, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure we had it in us. But apparently we had it in us. I just worry, though, because that doesn't mean we just check the box of women empowerment and women in high office. That means we just got started, right? But I worry that, that there'll be a backlash of like, oh, well, don't you worry about it. We already took care of that. There's a woman in the woman in the White House. You don't have to worry about women leadership anymore. I'm like, no, we have to worry about it because we're just scratching the surface.
And it's a bit bloody late, isn't it? I mean, to be perfectly frank, when you look at that meme that's been circulating on social of all the vice presidents over the years since it all started,
right,
and they've all been white men, and then there's one woman.
Right.
And if you do it with presidents, they'll all be white men, and then there'll be one black man and no women. So it's about bloody time, really, isn't it, I think?
Yes. And I mean, you guys over in the UK had figured this out a while ago, right? So you've had, significant female leadership, but we have not. But I still think that globally we are underrepresented in leadership positions. I think that's a global issue. And so this is another reason why I'm so excited about my collaboration with you, is because we're collaborating across the pond. Right? I mean, we're showing women that we are much more alike than we are dissimilar. That yes, there's some cultural differences and whatnot, but that at the end of it, we have way more in common with one another than we don't. And so that just gives us even more strength, more numbers to draw upon, right? Not less, which is good.
And if we talk about the inequalities, what makes you angry about how the world treats older women?
I just don't like to be invisible. I have always commanded presence when I walked into a room. I also grew up on the stage. I was a theater person, so singing and dancing and acting on the stage, and maybe a little bit loud, maybe a little brash, maybe a little ballsy. I don't know, but I've always been able to make myself known in a room. And I've noticed that it's just not that way as much anymore. But I feel like I'm getting my voice back. I feel like I was hibernating for a little bit. Like I was trying to get my footing. Like I literally struggled with the face in the mirror for a little while, looking back at me. I wasn't sure what was happening. I mean, I knew what was happening. I just didn't like it. I mean, it's not like I'm an idiot. I knew what was happening. And so I think now I've sort of gotten over that hump, if that makes any sense. I have much more grace and much more acceptance. And I've done a lot more soul searching. And starting Kuel Life was a huge pivot for me, a huge shift in that I'm not worried about me anymore. I'm worried about all of us and just being more outward facing and less worried about what's going on with Jack, and, oh, Jack's getting old. How sad is that? Now my focus is, okay, all right, sisters, we're going to make noise and we've got, however many years left, 20, 30. I mean, we still have a lot of time and we have big plans. A lot of us have big plans. A lot of us are starting businesses. A lot of us want to travel the world. No one that I talk to is thinking, oh, I can't wait to sit with a blanket on my lap at the rocking chair and have my cat on my lap. No one I talk to says that. So I think we're heading in the right direction.
But it's interesting that when I said the world treats older women, and you said I don't like being invisible, but you see, I would question, is that the world making you invisible, or is it you actually making yourself invisible? And you actually went down that route. You
Right.
said, I didn't like the way I looked, and that caused me to, I'm guessing, maybe I'm extrapolating too much here, but to withdraw to a certain extent. And you talked about you were now finding your voice again. And I often challenge this about the invisibility thing, that I think we women we can do it to ourselves because we're not comfortable with the changes that are happening to us. We're struggling with those, and we can withdraw and forget the voice that we've actually always had. And I always talk to, people when I'm mentoring, I'm saying to them, are you actually still taking up space? Because to take up space as an older woman is really important. And not to withdraw, not to go to that rocking chair, whether it's actually or just in your head. So that I think is something to consider for all of us, really, as to whether we are still comfortable putting ourselves forward and finding our voice. But you have clearly found your voice because you've created what you've created now.
Rachel, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, is it really the world, or are we our worst enemy? I mean, did we do this to ourselves because we aren't comfortable and we start to get smaller and try to become less visible because we're not necessarily feeling our best selves, whether it's, menopausal weight gain or, the gravity effects on your face and your, whatever it may be, your thinning hair, whatever it is, it's causing you, or I shouldn't even talk in third person, me, like the stuff that was bothering me. And I had to have a big sit down, a big conversation with myself. And I'm like, are you really going to be this miserable for the next 30 years? Or are you going to rise above and put your big girl panties on and, make a difference, make a change? And I'm glad I can say that I decided to put my big girl panties on rather than be a little, just sad and depressed and disappear. So,
was there a catalyst that made you do that? Did you go down to a certain extent where you kind of just thought, okay, I've gone down enough now, I'm going to come back up again? Or was there something that happened that made you have that change?
For me, I think it was I started to lose my self-confidence. And I've always been a person who is super self-confident. And I felt myself shying away from being in the limelight, shying away from, being the louder voice in the room, or shying away from. And that made me sad. And I was very uncomfortable doing that because that's not who I am. And so I wasn't living in integrity. I was living outside of my own integrity. And then I had that sort of, oh my gosh, is this what I'm going to be doing for the remainder of the days on this planet? And I'm like, well, no, that's not acceptable. So it wasn't a particular event or, it wasn't a moment. It was this sort of realization that I was headed down a path that I didn't want to go down, and that I had to make a decision, abort that path and, rethink another path, or just let it happen. And I just wasn't comfortable with that, with letting it happen.
And what have you learned about yourself since you started to create the hub and create products and services for midlife women?
Gosh, I think one of the greatest things that I've figured out about myself is that I can be pretty inspiring. I can be pretty inspiring to other women and help them feel heard and not alone. And, the whole concept of stronger together, that's not malarkey. That's not like just words. That's how I live. And that's how I show up in my everyday life and in the Kuel Life community. And just the fact that I can exhibit my leadership skills in a way that I believe is far more beneficial than, for in the world, for all of us women, far more beneficial than saying like in a corporate environment or, behind a desk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's also about, it feels like you're stepping into perhaps a more authentic version of yourself.
Yeah, I think it feels that way. I don't, if I think it, I say it. I mean, I do use a filter. I mean, everyone should have a filter. I think sometimes people who don't have filters, that could be, less than desirable outcome wise, but I think I'm braver now. And it's really weird to me that I could be braver because I've always considered myself a pretty brave individual, but I feel braver. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, but I do. I feel braver.
Oh, I certainly feel braver. And I think that is, well, I was talking about, it's one of the things that comes with menopause, actually. It comes with a different hormonal profile that we are able to be braver because we lose so much of the estrogen, which just keeps us biddable, which keeps us, doing things for other people and actually, starting to think more about ourselves and what we want, and to be brave, to be, express our feelings, and also to embrace midlife anger, which I think can be very powerful, actually. Again, if we do it with the filter, right. But we are able to express anger about things that we're not happy about, rather than just complying. And I spend a lot of time just complying.
I think we all have. I mean, I think I think you really brought up a very good point just about the hormonal change. It's a good thing that our kids are either out of the house or near enough to adulthood that they can take care of themselves by the time we get to menopause, because we're just done with the nurturing thing. I mean, I don't want to nurture anybody anymore, like at that level. I really don't. I don't want to suckle one more person. You know what I mean? It's like, I've done enough of that my entire life. Now it's my turn, and not just my turn, but my turn with my sisters. Like, I think it's our turn now. And you're right. That just, I guess we are braver. Yeah. It's interesting because it's coming so much easier now than I thought it could be a few years ago. I didn't think that I could get here. So it's a great place to be.
I know. And I think the challenge now is how do we, as women who have arrived at this place, communicate it to younger women? Because it's all very well preaching to the choir, isn't it? But I'm now sort of grappling with this idea. How do I talk to younger women and inspire them that they don't need to be fearful about getting older, and they don't need to get smaller, and that actually on the other side of menopause, which may or may not be difficult depending on the individual, that there is a lot of really great stuff which both you and I are discovering.
I think that by doing what we're doing, just the fact that there's more available publicly, there's more talk about what's going on between us, all in menopause, after menopause. That stuff just wasn't talked about when we were growing up. I mean, I don't know about if your mom talked to you about menopause, but my mom didn't say word boo. I mean, I knew that she was having hot flashes because she would complain about them, but I didn't know what that meant. Like, I had no idea why she was, what was going on. And I wasn't like a small child either. I was in my early teens. It was totally, and it would have been a great conversation to have. And I think just by definition, because we have lifted the curtain up, right? Like opened the door, whatever metaphor you want to use. I think just doing that is going to help our younger sisters as they age, because they'll have role models to look at. We didn't have role models.
No, we didn't. You're right. I hope that is the case. I really do, because I want younger women to feel empowered throughout their lives and to realize that, we get better as we get older, we don't get worse.
Right.
So it's just not like that. I just don't see it like that.
I do this Sunday Share Your Story series, and I got lucky that you were willing to participate, and yours just came out recently, and you had some quote in there about something about we're ready to lead, not breed, or I can't remember the exact quote.
Oh yeah, it's the whales. Yeah, that we are, as we age, we become more valuable to our communities as leaders than as breeders.
I loved that quote. I was blown away. I'm like, oh my God, that is brilliant. And so I think that's a testament to what you were just talking about. Like, we are leading our younger sisters by not disappearing, by being out there, by showing them that we're still living large, that we're still starting businesses, that we're still traveling the world, that we're still dating if we're single, if we're still, you know what I mean? Like, we're not gone. We're here. Right.
There's a lot more to life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I know you speak Spanish, and I'm interested to know whether you have notice differences between how Hispanic culture and white American culture is different in its approach to women getting older. Have you noticed any differences there?
I can speak to my Cuban heritage, right? I grew up, I spoke Spanish before I spoke English. And it was crazy. My home life when I was a kid, it was like little Havana, inside the house, and then America when you walked out the door. And the women in my family, I had a lot of women in my family. My father had a lot of sisters. And these women, even though you're looking at, from Cuba, so you're looking at a Latin American culture, and you're looking at, a time of history where women, barely went to college, barely graduated from high school. I had aunts that were doctors and lawyers. And they were revered within our family culture. And the women, they were the matriarch. I mean, we had like a very matriarchal family upbringing. I don't know how it compares to, say, white culture. I don't see elderly people being revered in the United States. I see elderly people, that people want to put them away, or they're ignored, and that's such a shame, because there's so much to be learned. I mean, if we in our 50s have this much wisdom, wow, what are we going to be like in our 70s or 80s? That's a lot more life experience. So it seems almost like we're wasting resources by not paying a little bit closer attention to our elders. But in my family, women were really strong, and no one was going to put any Perez woman in the corner. I'll tell you that much. I mean,
but I'm very interested in different cultures and how aging is viewed in different cultures, but particularly women, obviously, because that's what I'm working with. But I think there is a real tendency in white Anglo-Saxon cultures, Australia, US, Canada, UK, to assume that the way we treat older people is the norm, and therefore we buy into that narrative that, we get worse as we get older, we get less relevant, we lose our relevance, we lose our power. And actually, if you look at the percentage of the world that doesn't process aging in the same way and doesn't have that feeling towards older women in particular, I think it's really interesting to actually see that there are many, many places in the world where it's simply not like that. And we would do a lot of good, I think, if we learnt from those places rather than assuming that this is the norm, because it ain't.
No, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, if you look at, the Asia Pacific area, or you look at parts of Europe, like in Greece, in Italy, Spain, Latin America, South America, you're right. You're absolutely right. Older women are not ignored. Older women are valued for their experience, for their wisdom. And it makes sense, right? I was reading somewhere recently, and oh my God, I don't remember where, but I was reading somewhere where, back in the day where, like, if you had to go out and look for berries, before there was actual, like, societies defined, when, separation of tasks and whatnot, and the women had to go and gather fruits and berries or whatnot. Well, hey, the older chick actually knows what's poisonous already. You might want to, heed her advice because she's probably either gotten sick or seen someone get sick. So, why reinvent the wheel? She has the information. Get it from her. You're just that much better off. And once again, we have so much wisdom. We have so many life experiences. We've been around for a little bit longer than than the younger set. So the thing is, we don't want to keep that information to ourselves. We want to share it. We want to help. We want to be useful. We want to be purposeful.
I've actually found that there's a very big difference between the way older women are treated in Protestant culture and in Catholic culture. And in Catholic countries, it's actually women have much more status as they get older than in predominantly Protestant countries. It's really interesting. I've been researching this, and I think there's something to do with that in Protestantism, our value is related to our ability to work. And therefore, as we age, it's assumed, or historically it was assumed, that we could no longer work. We couldn't do the physical work that historically was of the value. And that actually hasn't moved on to, reflect the culture that we live in now. So it's very interesting to me, these differences.
Why is it different in Catholicism then? I'm curious. I mean, I get the Protestant work ethic. That makes total sense. But I'm curious about the Catholicism part.
Well, right? I don't know, actually. But I think it's just that Protestant work ethic and value of youth isn't there. So there has always been more of a tendency to venerate age and wisdom.
That's very fascinating.
That's my assumption. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a little of my own digging, because now you have my curiosity piqued.
Yeah.
So.
I'm writing a book at the moment, and that is one of the themes that I will be writing about in my book. So yes, I've been researching that. I think it's fascinating how age is viewed around the world in different places. So I know you like to travel as well. So what's been your favourite destination so far?
So I love that question, and I hate that question because
you can't choose.
Well, and I often say that my favorite destination is the next place I'm going. I've enjoyed more of the off-beaten track. I loved Zanzibar, Bolivia. But, I mean, in all honesty, I find that there is something to be learned and experienced everywhere I've ever gone. Even taking, just a holiday and lying on the beach has its place. Like I was invited to a Bedouin wedding in Jordan. Wow. And I know it was so much fun. It was in the middle of the desert. I was traveling with my then husband, and we got invited because it was supposedly like good luck to have Westerners at your wedding. And they did they had 2 tents, one for the women and children, one for the men. We saw the whole herd of goats walk by, and then, I don't know, a couple hours later, plates of goats cooked came the other way. Yeah, and I have no idea, how that happened, because I didn't hear anything, but there you go. It was an amazing experience, but, I really struggled because I was in my mid-30s at the time, and the young woman who was getting married, who, by the way, was wearing a full-on Western white wedding dress in the middle of this desert. She was so miserable, Rachel. She couldn't stop crying. She was marrying a much older man. You know, she's like in her early teens. She was marrying a much older man, and she was going to go have to live with his family because that's the Bedouin tradition. So she was leaving her mother, her sisters, her cousins, her whole family structure. And, you know, I had to be quiet because I was an invited guest and I wasn't part of their culture, and I had no business making, you know, my wishes or my thoughts known. But I just wanted to take her and run away with her. But, you know, but not my place. Not my place. My place was to experience and not, you know, not judge because, but it was hard. It was hard as a 30-something-year-old woman. Oh, and then, and they gave my husband, we didn't have babies at the time. And they kept asking my husband, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? It was great. I mean, it was just, and my husband was like, I don't think anything's wrong with me, but okay.
I have actually, I'm gonna tell you, I have actually trekked in the desert in Jordan with the Bedouin, but I didn't go to a wedding.
No, but that's super cool. And what are the chances of that?
I
mean, that's a weird coincidence, right?
Isn't that a weird coincidence? Yeah. And it was probably one of the most amazing trips of my life. I was in a group, but I went by myself, so I didn't know anybody else in the group. And we trekked in Wadi Rum.
Oh, so, yes, I've been there. Yes, I have. Wadi Rum. Yes. Oh, my gosh, I almost forgot about that until you said it. I'm assuming you got to Petra, because that is
I did.
One of the most magical places. Yeah. So it sounds like you enjoy traveling as well.
Oh, yeah, I do. I love it.
And your favorite place? Is it also the next place you're going? Or
my favorite place? Who's asking who the questions?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to turn it around. No, you're asking the questions, ma'am, not me.
That's all right. There's so many places. So many places. It's difficult for me to choose one. I mean, Jordan was amazing. That trip was amazing.
Yeah.
I've also been to Belize, which I found fantastic. I've also been to North Korea, which wasn't a very attractive place to go, but was fascinating. So
that is on my list. I would love to go there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is
very
on my
cool.
list. I have martial arts training, which is
I know that was my next question. You're a third degree black belt in taekwondo, aren't you?
Which is Korean, which is a Korean martial arts. Yeah. Yeah, I started that in my 40s, actually, of all times to start a martial arts career. I started it when my son was 3, so I was 40. Oh my gosh, I was 41. So I had my baby late in life. I was 38 when I had my son. Yeah. And so I started martial arts when he was 3 and trained for a little over 10 years and got to 3rd degree black belt, which was pretty cool. I'm kind of proud of myself over that.
I think that's very cool. Very cool. So do you still train? Do you still practice?
I don't practice. I have real hip problems. Like my hips just didn't want to do head level kicks anymore. I couldn't kick people in the head. And
shucks.
Exactly.
That must be so frustrating not being able to kick people in the head.
Right. So, and it was funny because my master instructor was like, well, just do lower kicks. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
If I can't kick people in the head, then I'm just not doing this at all.
Oh, you little perfectionist, you.
Oh, but don't a lot of us struggle with that? Don't a lot of us suffer from the perfectionist problem?
It seems a bit sad to give up the taekwondo. I think I would compromise and go for the lower level kicks. That's what I think I would do.
I went on to powerlift. I went on to powerlifting, which was a lot of fun. And, dragging 275 pounds behind me across the floor, was challenging in a different way. So I did that for a while. I also get bored of things and need new and interesting challenges.
I guess when you've got to, 3rd degree black belt, there's nowhere else to go, is there? Really?
Oh, no, ma'am, there is. There's actually, I would have gotten my master's, which would have been 4 degrees as a master of taekwondo. And I thought about doing that. I thought about sticking it out to get my master's, but I just didn't I had sort of lost some of my passion for it, and to train to become a master is all consuming. I mean, it's an all consuming task and endeavor. And my heart wasn't in it anymore. It was time to move on. And I moved on. But I loved that time of my life. And I made some amazing, significant relationships. Some of my dearest, closest, now forever lifetime friends came through that decade.
And I know fitness is very important to you. And I am assuming you probably think it's very important for us midlife women. Would I be right in thinking that?
100%. And here's the deal. I mean, even if you've never exercised before your entire life, it's not too late to start. And there is only positive that can come from it. Only positive. You know, you start losing muscle mass and bone density, even as early as your mid-30s. It starts to happen. And it just gets faster and faster. And as you age. And so the only way to counterbalance that is to do, lift heavy things. Weight-bearing exercise, even if it's just your own body. You can do weight-bearing exercises just with your own body that will help keep your bone density and your muscle mass, healthy. Because sure, let's just say your brain's intact and you have such a passion and a vision and there's so much you want to do in the world. But if your machine is broken, if your machine doesn't work, then no matter how much you want to do or accomplish, you might not be able to do it because you need the contraction that we live in to make things happen. And so taking care of the machine, I believe, becomes even more crucial as we get older. And ladies, if you've never done anything in your entire life, it doesn't matter. Start right now, today, I mean, it doesn't matter. Take a walk. Try doing a plank. Even if you can only plank for like 2 seconds today. If you plank, you know what I mean? If you keep doing it, before you know it, you're planking for a minute. Then you're planking for 5 minutes. And that's a full body exercise you can do anywhere, right? I mean, so yes, I'm a huge fitness freak, I guess, or champion for fitness.
And what would you most like midlife women to know?
If I can save a woman from ever feeling the way I felt as I was looking in that mirror, that I was losing myself, that I was disappearing, and you called it out, Rachel. You said, I think you were doing it to yourself, and I was. If I could save another woman from that, and just know you can skip right over that. You can skip right over that and just keep on going. That, I think, would be the thing that I would want women to know. You don't have to do that. You can embrace the changes, and you don't have to let yourself disappear.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. It really helps me get the message out. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.